Hour number 3, live right here on a triple header day of college football playoff action. It is College Football Today, live on SportsGrid. He is the mastermind of the pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. He is OK Dubs. That is Kevin Walsh. I am Ben Stevens. It is hour number 3. Our threes are up in the air. We get you set for this Saturday in the college football playoff. The first ever 12-team CFB.
I can't.
There's the bracket, by the way. That's what we have to get us ready for this Saturday. Opening round games across the docket. 3 on this Saturday, starting at noon Eastern time in State College, Pennsylvania, between Penn State and SMU. Our nightcap is Ohio State and Tennessee. Mixed in the middle, it's the top at-large team in Texas, hosting the bid stealer and the ACC champs in Clemson. Lisi guy last night, Notre Dame in South Bend, victorious in the first ever 12-team college football playoff game, the first ever on-campus playoff game in the history of this sport. The Irish win by double digits, frankly, in a game that was not even that close. An impressive effort for the Fighting Irish, who basically, against non-MAC opponents this year, Joe, has been doing it all season long. Now 10-0-1 against the spread in those 11 contests against teams outside of the Mid-American.
Yeah, and they've won 11 straight now after the loss to Northern Illinois in the early part of the season. They did it in terms of interior line play, offense and defensive lines. Jeremiah Love in the rushing attack, 194 yards on the ground, well over 5 yards per carry, and they put Curtis Rourke and that passing attack into long third downs, dialed up blitz packages, and they just dominated Indiana right from the get-go. Indiana only converted 5 of 12 third down conversions. This defense is playing lights out, Kev, and the way they're playing, they match up very well against Georgia next week.
Yeah, I look, this is a very interesting. Who matches up well against Georgia next week?
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. I thought we were doing Ohio State, Tennessee. You just lost me.
We were.
Right. That's okay.
If you notice, we weren't really on there for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So we had to figure out some things behind us.
All right.
We were talking about the bracket.
The drones are in the area. Everything's it's all right.
You seen one?
Hey, you know what we say to those drones?
Hey.
But don't say it. All right. But we were breaking down the bracket, trying to paint the path, if you will, because
it's a setup. We were setting up this game today.
You threw me for a loop for a second.
That's
all right. That's look.
You're a good host.
The thing with Notre Dame and Georgia is still this idea that we're not really sure if either of those quarterbacks are going to be able to complete a pass, really.
Probably the total will be, what, 43 and a half, 44?
It's out.
Yeah, is it? I didn't take a look.
It is in the 40s. Let me just double-check and make sure. It is 44 and a half. That's the total for Georgia and Notre Dame.
Fitting.
Which is about a week and a half away on New Year's Day.
Fitting.
That to me, though, it's a very, very fascinating spot to see because the uncertainty in a college football playoff, I don't know, can you really even come up with something like that? Like where we've never even seen the quarterback who's going to play before? We have a half of football out of Stockton.
Trying to look back and think. Well, Cardale Jones.
I mean, I'm just thinking way back when Florida State played Tennessee back in the day. That they used a backup quarterback in the championship game, 1998. Well, I'm serious. I'm going way back.
I know. I mean,
I'm just. It's one of those things. Look, I obviously have my confidence level within Georgia.
Yeah.
Because there's a number of ways that they can attack, but I can't tell you it's not on the board that the pass attack isn't so atrocious that the whole thing collapses.
We don't know what Gunnar Stockton is going to do, right? He's had 2 weeks in Mike Bobo's system to get ready in preparation with an understanding that either Notre Dame or Indiana would take on Georgia in New Orleans at the Sugar Bowl. So we'll see. A lot to be figured out. Notre Dame now has more than a week as well in terms of that prep time. That's the nightcap on New Year's Day, the very first day of 2025 in the Big Easy. The nightcap on this first full Saturday ever in the 12-team era of the college football playoff is in Columbus. These are our games of the week, of course. We recap our big matchups here on this Saturday. So let's go to CBUS inside Ohio Stadium. The Buckeyes a 7.5-point favorite. In some markets, that number becoming closer to a flat touchdown, that number of 7. 46.5 is the total. It is the lowest we have seen here, Lisi Guy, for any of our 4 opening round matchups in the college football playoff. How much offense do you expect tonight between Ohio State and Tennessee?
I think it could be similar to the game that we saw play out in the last game against Michigan in that matchup, a lower scoring game because Tennessee wants to run the football. And again, if they dictate the tempo on the road tonight, I don't think they allow Will Howard to throw it 20, 30 times in this matchup. I think they control the clock, and they can win this ball game going away if Dylan Sampson and the rushing attack are dominant. And that's really why you're seeing the 46.5s, because of the success of Michigan in that last regular season game, because of the success of some of the other teams like Oregon on the ground against that Ohio State front seven. So again, can it fly through the total? Absolutely. If Ohio State starts fast with Ibuka and that passing attack with Will Howard, if they jump up early, could put a lot of pressure on Nico. But it's up to Tennessee that defense to contain them, and that's why we'll see how this game plays out.
Here's an interesting note that I didn't make yet. Both coaches entered the season with excellent resumes off of a bye.
Yeah.
Then you look at what they did this year. Ohio State hosted Nebraska and nearly lost at home, which Ryan Day wouldn't have survived. And Tennessee lost to Arkansas. So now it's not a pure bye. It's extra rest. I'm very interested in if these two teams started to prep for one another before the matchup was set, because the odds got very confident. If you guys remember, before conference championship games were played, we actually saw an Ohio State-Tennessee line. So these two did not have to wait for the selection show to begin that prep. Now, they could have risked it being wasted time.
Right.
I imagine they wanted to be working anyway. So I think if these guys are on their game, it would lean me towards the over, then, that these two offensive first coaches here would have those groups ready to play.
Two very elite defenses as it stands right now. Ohio State, the best scoring defense in all of college football. The Volunteers tied for the 4th best scoring defense. Only 5 defenses at the FBS level, allowing fewer than 2 touchdowns per game on average. It is the Buckeyes and the Vols included in that. Ryan Day, 12-8 straight up in his time in Columbus against teams ranked in the top 10 in the AP poll or the CFB. The Vols are that 10-16-1 against the spread for Ohio State under Day against a ranked foe. As an underdog with Josh Heupel since 2021, the Volunteers are just 4-9 against the number, but all 4 covers, Lisi Guy, an outright victory. Now, Kev, back to you. We haven't talked about the quarterback comparison in this matchup. Huge spot for the freshman in Nico Iamaleava, who has struggled at times during his first full year as the starter on Rocky Top. Will Howard, you could make a couple of the same arguments that he's been inconsistent for Ohio State at that quarterback spot. How do you compare the two quarterbacks? How will it affect the outcome tonight in Columbus?
So I think that ultimately you still have to look at Nico, and maybe this is silly, but he is still the higher ceiling quarterback. And I think Will Howard might come maybe oddly with a little more safety, because he has the rushing ability. And I mean, also just he's playing with better weapons out there than Nico is. But Nico is still someone that we believed would be a pure Heisman contender. I think he will be next year, kind of regardless of what happens in this game. If Nico was on, if Nico had found anything as they've been getting closer to this game, you've talked a lot about, hey, if Tennessee pulls off the upset, watch out. Well, that's true, especially if it's pulling off the upset with Nico playing great football.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say both quarterbacks, Howard needs to get through that number tonight.
I would agree, and at times Tennessee has allowed it. Now to Austin, Texas, and Clemson. A preview next.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set, to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
We welcome you back to College Football Today, live right here on SportsGrid. It is a college football playoff triple header on this Saturday for the first time ever in the 12-team era of the CFP. Our game in the middle of the afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern time, is the kick between the 5-seed Texas as they host in Austin that 12-seed in Clemson. The bid-stealing Tigers and the ACC champs. Kev, we have seen movement in this game, perhaps more than the other three in the last 48 hours. Yep. It was 11.5 in favor of the Longhorns. It already was the largest spread in our opening round quadruple header. It is now nearly 2 touchdowns in favor of Texas, a total at 50 and a hook. Will this game reflect the odds? Will it be lopsided in favor of the Longhorns?
I don't think so. I'm on Clemson's first half catching 7 and a hook. I will say if it gets to 14, not that I would, my bet's in. I'd probably then add a plus 14 bet on Clemson at that point. And it might. It really might. Just, look, I'm following, as we sit here, but the plus 13.5s, minus 118s, or minus 110. So we're only getting closer and closer to UT here. What I wonder a little bit, because this is just, it's how bettors are, Joe. If Penn State rolls in the opening game, do you think you might get some people go, favorites, home field, wham, 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 just start hitting Texas?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I'm actually a little shocked that we're seeing money come in on Texas as much as it is, because we saw 11.5, we're up to 13.5 right now. And you look at some of the games that Texas laid. Let's look at a beaten down Kentucky team. They laid 18.5 in that game at home. No cover. They laid 21 or 20.5 on the road in Vanderbilt. No cover. So there were spots where they laid at home that they did not step up. And I understand Clemson, from an offensive perspective, isn't this, most explosive offense that we've seen in college football. Yeah. But it's still a coach that's been there 7 times in terms of the college football playoff. It is a public dog. There's a lot of people that like Clemson today. You give them now 2 touchdowns, I think you're going to get flooded with Clemson money in terms of that aspect. So I am really, I call it a divergence. Something doesn't add up. Yep. Public dog, now the line is moving in favor of Texas. Why?
No,
right?
You think Clemson's a public dog?
I do. I do feel that way. A lot of people, to me, like Clemson. People maybe in the industry are just looking. There's a lot of Clemson people out there today. I'm not one of them. I'm on Texas, but I just get that feeling.
The stats for the number investment on FanDuel specifically, just the FanDuel Sportsbook, 53% of the money on the spread on Clemson as the dog, 59% of the bets on Clemson. So, yeah, a little bit of what is that perceived market movement. Let's talk about that playoff pedigree, Kev. The fact that this is the 7th appearance for the Tigers in the college football playoff, albeit in the first ever field of 12, it is everybody's debut. Does that factor in at all to why you are backing Clemson early and often, or is it specifically for this Clemson team in this individual matchup against Texas?
100%. And I think it would be a mistake not to. I actually feel that we've probably – so we've I think all, at least I know you and I have for sure, taken our shots at Dabo.
Sure.
I think they've been earned. In the midst of all of this, the ACC can't touch this guy.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how bad the season is. It doesn't matter who's sitting across from him in that game. Yeah. He's just going to win the ACC. Now, I mean, I know last year they didn't get it, but like for the most part here, right? Was it 2 years ago they had a super down year and they ended up like playing North Carolina in the ACC title
Still
game?
Won it, yeah.
They're like, Drake May, sorry, and then you got real low on him and da-da-da. Like, I just think Dabo has consistently been good enough.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's where it's always like, is the grass greener, right? And that's been you make the case for Ryan Day, the saving grace for Ryan, like is the grass greener? Well, sometimes the scale can shift, and I actually think had Dabo lost to SMU, the scale could have shifted a little. Like, come on, man, like you didn't win one game against like a legitimate opponent.
Right.
But I think sometimes that's where the cream can rise to the top. And Dabo is still one of the, I don't want to go history, so recent history 10 best coaches, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it makes the difference.
Nobody in this 12-team field now has more appearances in the college football playoff in its 11 years than the 7 that Dabo Swinney and the Tigers do. They have 8 ACC championships in the last decade as well. Cade Klubnik has been there for a good majority of it. And when you look at this quarterback matchup, Lisi guy, I think entering this year, our entire anticipation would have been, well, Quinn Ewers has the edge. That Longhorns offense has the edge over a stagnant and stale Clemson offense the past few seasons, especially in year number 1 a year ago with Garrett Riley orchestrating the scheme. Who do you think quarterback-wise, offensively, has that edge today in Austin?
I think it's Texas. It's significant. I really do. I think Quinn Ewers could throw for 3 1/4 today. I really believe that, and I think they put the pressure on Clemson to match them score for score. That is the recipe if I'm calling the plays for Sark in that offense. And the reason why I say that is if you're going to run the football, and I understand Wisner is a huge part of that offense, you still want to run it. But I want to jump up 14-0 and then run it. I don't want to be in a ball game 7-0, methodical, just the way South Carolina played them, right? And they had to, where it feeds into Clemson because of sometimes the inconsistency of that Clemson offense and Cade Klubnik. Yeah. I'm at home. I have the speed. I want to push the tempo. I want to jump out 21-0 and then game on, see if you can match us.
If Texas wins probably by any margin, but especially how you're saying,
right,
they're going to go to very clean favorites to win the title.
No doubt.
Because what's holding Oregon just above them is Oregon's already in to the next round. But Texas is going to potentially be a bigger favorite next week than they are this week. So,
yeah.
And Oregon, it's not a situation, which is, again, where the format, is not perfect.
Yeah.
It's not as if, like, man, if Tennessee beats Ohio State, this is awesome. That means the Vols are real dangerous. I think you're still looking at a much shorter number than anything near what Texas will lay next week.
The Longhorns right now, second best price, but only 10 cents back of Oregon, who is your national championship favorite and the number 1 overall seed. Texas would be in the projected hypothetical matchup against the 4-seed Arizona State, also a 2-touchdown favorite in the Peach Bowl. To State College, Pennsylvania, next.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that,
I
Kenny?
would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The first game of our three on this college football playoff triple header Saturday in the first ever 12-team CFP starts in State College. Noon Eastern time is the kick for the 6th seed Penn State in Happy Valley hosting the 11th seed SMU. Still an 8.5-point spread in favor of the Nittany Lions. Our total has worked its way down on this game day Saturday to 52 and a hook. Lisi, earlier in the show, you shared you think the Mustangs can keep this game within margin. If SMU does that, how do the Mustangs get it done?
Well, on a defensive perspective, shut down Katron Allen and Nick Singleton and put the ball game on Drew Aller's shoulders. I honestly believe that's the recipe from a defensive perspective to win it against Penn State. I think, from an offensive perspective, I need Kevin Jennings to throw the football around the yard, open up Rashad Smith in the rushing attack, win the turnover battle. That's easier said than done. But again, use your tempo. I think they're coming into this game, Ben. SMU is confident. They had a near miss with Clemson. They lost that matchup. They started a little bit tight, playing in their first ACC championship. That game is behind them now. I think you're going to get everything but the kitchen sink with the extra week of preparation. I do believe in Rhett Lashley. I believe in this offense more than I believe in Drew Aller, Kev. And to me, that's the recipe to potentially striking the upset. I'm on SMU today.
Man, this number is on the move.
What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? Juicy.
Now you have. There was one book flipping a 7.5 out there when we were talking earlier today. Yeah. That same book's up to 9.5.
Wow.
So I guess they were flirting with it. Another's at 9. So now it looks like people have woke up and started to click Penn State.
Yeah.
I don't think we touched double digits. We might, though.
It's possible.
I imagine, again, that could be a jump-in point for people on that type of number.
Yeah.
Your total's not really moving.
No.
52.5. That's the number that I'm on towards the over here. Just to talk the side of it, though, the determining factor on – remember, SMU is also favored to beat Clemson,
correct,
right? So SMU doesn't necessarily have the best resume in a situation like this. Penn State, you would usually go, okay, SMU is not Ohio State, Oregon, so
right.
This is fine. It's the Minnesota-USC games where Penn State, look, they won. Give them credit. They're obviously a college football playoff deserving team. We know that for Penn State. It's just we also know that they can be put on upset alert. And I think SMU is definitely in the USC, Minnesota level. And I don't say that Minnesota and USC are much better than their records. I don't say that but to despair them at all. Like that is the SMU can, I believe, hang.
Right.
Now, I know it's a half hour away. Like, we'll be here. If it gets to 10, I might click myself.
I just want to say, from the national championship odds, we've seen a little movement. Tennessee from 25 to now 28. SMU at 50. If you believe potentially that they are going to win this game like I do, 50-1, they're favored already in terms of a look-ahead line against Boise State.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting they're going to win the national championship. What I'm telling you, though, that 50-1 is no longer going to be there if they get back-to-back wins, right? So from a value perspective, it is the lottery ticket. I think all these teams, Tennessee 28, Arizona State 50, SMU 50, and you want to take a shot on Clemson, why not? 60-1.
Those cash-out options, as we project throughout this bracket, are going to be available like we have never seen so far in the history of the college football playoff, now in the largest field we have ever seen. Penn State as a favorite since 2022, 32-1 straight up, 23-9-1 against the spread. SMU an underdog only twice this year, outright victories each time over TCU and Louisville in high-scoring games that featured at least 64 points. So let's go to that total. Kev, you are thinking the over is in play today in Happy Valley. If it trends to the over and goes over that number, which side do you think it favors?
Oh, interesting. I thought you were going to ask me who do I need to carry the load, because I think I can get it anyway.
Yeah.
I think James Franklin would be pleased to run it up if it gets there. I guess I would say, though, if it does get over, it's not as likely to happen in a game that finishes 45-20. Yeah. So it means SMU has then moved the football. Kevin Jennings has been able to throw it successfully. So I would say an over more likely favors SMU.
Penn State in their first 5 Big Ten games, only averaging 24 points per game, under in 4 of 5. Penn State over in 4 of their 5 Big Ten games to end out the year, including that championship number against Oregon, averaging better than 38 points per game. The Nittany Lions offense has been on the upswing. Plenty more on college football today. Next.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh, yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
It is a historic weekend in college football because of the expanded 12-team college football playoff. It goes without saying, but this is the largest ever field we have seen reach a postseason and still have the opportunity to win a national championship, with the most wins necessary in the most games ever to claim that national crown, which means it's not just a semifinal and a national championship. It's not the BCS era of two teams that will play for a championship dictated by computers. It's not magazine and newspaper writers determining who is the best team in college football. It is the results on the field over multiple rounds. This is the opening round of the CFP on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day in just about a week and a half. It is the quarterfinal rounds where four teams await the results of this weekend, all idle, in waiting, in hoping for their chance, eager to get to the end of 2024 and the start of 2025. And Lisi, guy, that begins with number 1 Oregon, the only undefeated FBS team in the sport this year, a perfect 13-0 in its first year in the Big Ten, a conference championship that had eluded them in the Pac-12 in the past few seasons. Joe, you were one of the people that I know most optimistic about Oregon in its first year in the Big Ten Conference, and the Ducks proved you right. A lot of people have made a lot of the difficult path that Oregon has despite being the number 1 overall seed in the college football playoff field. How do you think Oregon is getting ready for the CFP?
I think very well. I think Dan Lanning, again, from a preparation standpoint, similar to Kirby Smart, not the same success, obviously, with no national championships and no college football playoff wins to this point. But just in terms of the games that they lose, they're still prepared. And the big matchups, I've seen Dan Lanning, to me, elevate his offense and his team from a whole perspective. And that's why I still buy in to Oregon big picture. I still think they have value at plus 350. Maybe, to Kevin's point, not as dominant as some of the better defenses that we've seen in their respective conferences. But I still think from an offensive perspective, they are so balanced in that veteran leadership of what Dillon Gabriel brings and the ability for Dan Lanning to coach up that talent, right? We haven't seen the significant drop-off. Dillingham moves on from Oregon to Arizona State. Bo Nix still elevates. Now Dillon Gabriel, plug-and-play type of player. So until that changes, I still believe they're the front runners right now until you knock the Kings out.
Stop. They're not the Kings. I'm not. Every time you find a way, they're not the Kings.
They're undefeated, Kev.
Great.
I mean, all right, great.
You know what? So I'm glad you said that. You know what? We've not actually been able to address it.
But you got to give them
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Hold on. Is for a few years, I would look at you and go, the Big Ten's not that good, right? And the second Oregon shows up, run the table. That's not great. It's not. Because you could try and make the comment to the SEC, except the Kings of that conference, real Kings, who've actually won something, dumped Texas on their head both times.
Texas did play in the conference championship.
100%. Listen, making it is one thing.
Yep.
Oregon went 13-0, year one in the Big. The whole bit on the Pac-12 for a long time was they can't even get a seat at the table. The Pac-12 pulled up to the Big Ten and said, "Whoa, this is comfortable. It's not even as cold as they told us it was going to be." Hey, I'm like, you want to go a step further? Ohio State and Penn State, one of them loses, it's real bad. If by some chance they both lose, I think they should remove Oregon and give the bye to Bama and let Bama play in the Rose Bowl. No, because I'm like...
But you still can't take away from the success that they have had.
Of course.
I mean, we had...
And it's justified.
Right.
The one thing I would say about Oregon in comparison to some of the other Big Ten teams, certainly Indiana, Penn State entering this matchup against SMU, failing to step up on occasion when not expected to win. Oregon did so at home against Ohio State, catching a few points. Oregon did so in a big way in the Big Ten title game in a shootout against Penn State. Oregon's quality of win, a single loss, really cannot be argued against here, at least in my estimation. 4 wins against teams currently ranked in the CFB top 25, the same as Georgia. Georgia's argument would be, well, our 4 are playing in the college football playoff, where the Ducks would say we only have 3. It's Penn State, Ohio State, and Boise State.
What's interesting, though, and this is a tough thing to do because it's not like we get like a million out of conference heavyweight battles, right? But Oregon's, of the trio, the one out of conference was Boise.
Did not cover.
Forget didn't cover. They're supposed to be a gazillion levels above Boise State. Sure. The game was in Eugene, and it was a 3-point final.
Yeah.
Like, now listen, I'm not going to pretend like Georgia didn't get spooked by a number of different teams, including that of Georgia Tech. They also demolished a team like Clemson, right? And, ultimately, from a power rating perspective, we talk about the odds. Clemson would probably still be favored if they played Boise today.
No doubt about it. And one of the interesting things about Georgia, at least from our perspective, the odds perspective, Georgia a perfect 4-0 against the spread in those 4 ranked wins over the 4 teams that will play alongside the Dogs in the CFP. Did not cover a single game elsewhere in the remaining 13 or the remaining 9 to fill out that 13-game schedule. So, Kev, you are not a believer in the Ducks. You still believe the best team in the college football playoff is Georgia. Do you have a bet on the Dogs to win the national championship? Is 5-1 still an enticing price?
Oh, if you don't have one yet, actually, I'd probably then – I mean, look, I know the numbers aren't the same. You can make the wager. But I'd probably be pleased with a far bigger – or far lesser payout and just betting the Notre Dame game. Because obviously, it's not that you can't, of course you don't think they can win the title without winning that game, but it's more about if they win that game, you may not still want the bet.
Yeah.
Like there's a world, let me be very clear here, as the most unbiased man in the history of sports media, which people think's a bit, but it's not a bit, which is why it's a bit. If they play Notre Dame, a win is not just enough to say, oh, they're all fine and good. That is why, and this is where I know I am different than people, but I don't care. It's what makes me me. I don't care that Oregon's 13-0. This isn't, we don't sit down here, read the standings, and then figure it all out. Oregon's defense has not been championship level.
What about their offense?
Yeah, that's great. You just said that yes, that's real, right? You're like, wow, the way Dan Lanning gets the offense ready. I forgot when he was the offensive coordinator.
But he still had defensive game plans to win those games. Even if their defense wasn't Georgia or Texas in terms of the stats or even Notre Dame, they have found ways to win. And again, I just think, how many losses does he have in his career as a head coach?
He has the best win percentage as an FBS active head coach right now, but only 3 full seasons.
But again, and look, this is where I'm the balance between prodding and being serious. Dan Lanning also never could beat a real good team until he got to beat the real good teams of the Big Ten, right?
Yeah.
You could say it was early on in the process. Georgia almost wiped him off the face of the earth, and then last year he could not touch DeBoer in Washington. That's a very real thing. It is.
Yeah,
and
but
here's the
when
thing
you
about
say can't touch, I mean, they lost both of those games in fourth quarter. It was
the second one they had to make a big comeback in. The first one was super, super close, and they got bad fourth down variance ultimately. But the other thing with Oregon, which I think is, and I'm not trying to take away, but we look at the Ohio State game. What's kind of lost in that is they were dogs in that game.
They were.
Right? Like, all in all, when you take the number 1 team won by a point at home, right? Like, that is not overly dominant.
No.
Like, their best result of the year is beating Penn State, which is a rite of passage to any great team that plays in the Big Ten. So you're like, it's just, again, I refuse any notion. And the odds tell you, Oregon is not on a tier of their own. They are 13-0. They're not in their own lane.
And part of that is the path. Oregon awaits the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee tonight. Boise State awaits the winner of Penn State and SMU. ASU will take on the winner of Texas and Clemson. Let's get you some winning wagers on this college football playoff Saturday. Next.
actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that,
I
Kenny?
would never stiff anybody. When he texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
We welcome you back to College Football Today, live right here on SportsGrid. We are just about 15 minutes away from the start of our college football playoff triple header on this Saturday. The first ever 12-team CFP continues. So it is time, Kev, as we near the conclusion of our College Football Today program, that we give you some winning wagers, and it starts in the same place always.
What a program it is. Let's hit the end zone, find some excellence. It's Pay Dirt Picks. So I will say there's actually been enough movement that I wouldn't mind, not that I don't like who I'm about to get to here, but I will just add, I think Brashad Smith at minus 120 is a really nice wager. Scored last week through the air, which is where Penn State's more vulnerable. But him not having a rushing touchdown is enticing to me. At minus 120, if you'd like to get involved with the first game, I don't mind it. What I do like, though, from the Texas game is Matthew Golden. I don't think we're expecting Isaiah Bond to play. Clemson gives up a lot of passing touchdowns throughout this season. We've seen Golden step up in the absence of Bond before, and Golden's now not scored, I believe it's 2, if not 3 consecutive games. I wanted to get a plus price for the people here, Lisi. We get one at plus 125.
It's a great look, and I can tell you from experience in betting on Isaiah Bond, even if he was in that lineup, he'd be the invisible man because they don't even utilize him in terms of the passing attack in any capacity. So good look by you. I'm sticking with Texas. I'm going to Jaden Blue in the rushing attack. Plus 165. I know Wisner has the front money in terms of chalk, but I think Jaden Blue, the change of pace back end, hit pay dirt today. We talk about Clemson's defense giving up $150 on the ground, and they've been abused by better rushing offenses. I'll take Jaden Blue to hit pay dirt today.
Jaden Blue also involved in that receiving game out of the backfield alongside Quinn Ewers or perhaps Arch Manning later this afternoon in Austin. A lot of action in the Texas and Clemson game here on the desk for CFT and behind the scenes. I'll go to the Tennessee and Ohio State game as our nightcap. Dylan Sampson, minus 145. Might seem like a chalky, juicy price that you have to pay, but if you've been following the show for any duration of time, you know that in college football, anytime touchdown props can be outrageous. And for a guy in Sampson who has scored 22 rushing touchdowns this year, that's top 5 in the country, is the SEC's leading rusher, is in the top 10 in terms of total rushing yards, his numbers throughout this season, greater than 5-1, minus 900, in quadruple digits at times. Basically, what you are asking for against Ohio State, the best scoring defense in the country, is Tennessee going to score? If so, more than likely it is Dylan Sampson. I'll lay the wager at minus 145. What about the guys behind the scenes and behind the sticks? AJ Freeze, our best handicapper here at the SportsGrid Network, our technical director, plus 125 for the Texas tight end, Gunnar Helm, who is sneaky, become Quinn Ewer's top target and favorite look throughout this season. And the two best friends that don't even realize how much of best friends they are, Joe Frizo and Chris Kofsky, both on Phil Maffa at plus 110 to hit Pater. Has not been great for Maffa as of late on the ground. Clemson will need him today against Texas if they have a weaker spot, Lisi guy. It is the Longhorns defending the run more so than the pass because they are the best passing defense statistically in the sport.
And we talk about Maffa, right? Clemson needs to run the football effectively. They only had 62 in the ACC championship game, so we'll see how that plays out. Did they both know? Is it a reveal? I
think our producer, Joe Frizo, put it in first. Executive producer, Chris Kofsky, saw it, put it in, and said, you know what? It's the holidays. We're giving gifts to each other.
Right.
We're all such good
Kumbaya.
friends. We're going to keep Phil Maffa at plus 110. It's almost like the monitors behind us. A slight preview or a tease to how this segment was going to go from the end zone, Kevin, to the vault.
Open it up. Let's find some value, shall we? Let's go for the loop. You guys, come on. You already knew it was going to be a passing touchdown each quarter, Penn State, SMU. I think this game has juice. I don't know if I did it on the show, but I know I was just kind of having a fun conference championship Saturday, placed it in Oregon, Penn State. What a rocket ship that whole thing was.
Yeah.
Both of these teams, in touchdowns allowed, far more through the air than the ground. I think it's a nice way to play. At least you're getting 6-1.
No, not bad. You might get me on that later. I couldn't find bets that I actually liked, typically in going for the loot. I do like 10-1 or greater. I couldn't find anything. Going to stick to the SMU.
About that.
SMU, Brashard Smith, plus 235 on the ground in terms of 110 rushing yards. We talk about Kevin Jennings opening it up for Brashard Smith. I think he could break out. Everybody looking to Penn State on the ground. I'm looking to SMU. He's the catalyst. He's the X factor. He has a huge game today.
Multiple passing touchdowns, by the way, for Kevin Jennings, Kev, to your point, in 6 of the final 8, including 3 and more than 300 in the ACC championship game. Drew Aller will need to continue that production. Brashard Smith, 147 scrimmage yards in that ACC championship game. He has scored in 6 consecutive, 10 total touchdowns in that sample size. I go to Quintravion Wisener, the running back for Texas. Still believe he is the lead back. 125 plus on the ground. His rushing yards prop, just standard, is 88.5, so we'll hit the alt market at plus 240. We have seen Quintravion Wisener go over this number of at least $125 on the ground a lot as of late. Not in the SEC championship against Georgia, just 51 yards, but in their final 2 regular season games against Texas A&M, 26 carries, $158, or 33 carries, $158 against the Aggies, 26 carries, 158 yards against Kentucky. He is a guy that has become their lead back, a facilitator on the ground, and Clemson has struggled defending the run this year, allowing 150 yards per game on the ground, the most we have seen Clemson give up since 2016 defending that run. What did you forget to tell me?
Quick behind the scenes here, since we're going to do PFT in a second anyway. The other day he was talking about sell me something, and because again, Lisi kind of has his own rules for this segment, and he goes, well, you know how I go for the loot, I like to keep it 10-1 or better.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I didn't realize that you were going 10 to. It's 2-1 or better. He put a 5x multiplier on his own segment,
which is insane. Also notice where he did not pick any of the outright underdogs, which is kind of representative of what we are seeing in the opening round. But the best bets for all 3 games of the CFP next.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on. I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Five minutes away from the start of our triple header Saturday in the college football playoff. It is a historic day in college football and here on SportsGrid. College football today, our big game best bets, a best wager for each and every game of the three that we have in the first ever 12-team CFP. That starts in just 5 minutes, so let's get right to it. Noon Eastern time in Happy Valley. It's Penn State, it's SMU, 6 versus 11 in your bracket. 8.5-point spread in favor of the Nittany Lions. A total working its way down ever so slightly on this Saturday morning, 52.5. K-Dubs, I know you're looking at this total. Yeah. What is your best bet for State College?
It's worked down more, down to 51.5. Wow. I really like the over in this game. I think both teams are better off passing than running in this game, which to me makes sure we get chunked plays, not stopping the clock as much. If you look at SMU, 30-plus, very consistently as Jennings has come on. Yeah. And honestly, the Penn State defense in those step-up games, the defense has been vulnerable. Really, the only game that where you say, oh, nice, was Ohio State. Different setting at home. But their offense, it has stepped up against the Ducks last week, against Minnesota when they needed to on the road. I think we get points here at 51.5, 52.5.
You might get it. I'll be rooting it in for you. What I do feel in terms of this matchup, that I have the better quarterback in terms of this ball game, Kevin Jennings over Drew Aller. I think there's a lot more pressure, Ben, on James Franklin and Penn State. We saw Notre Dame come out fast and loose last night. I'm not so sure you see that out of Penn State. They need to win this game. I think SMU plays it fast and loose. They run it, they throw it, and let's not forget how Penn State has played down to the level of competition. New intel coming into the market for me. I love SMU right now.
Penn State expected to win this game, Joe. So I don't think they get the narrative bump of winning a marquee matchup in the college football playoff that many have desired out of James Franklin in his decade plus in Happy Valley. Kev, I agree. I think we see some offense, and I think it's mostly through the air. So I'll look at a running back, but as a key component of this Andy Kotelnicki offense, Nick Singleton over 34.5 receiving yards, 4 grabs for 43 yards, and a score against the Ducks in the Big Ten title game, at least 37 receiving yards in 5 of the final 8. for Penn State. That game starts in just about 5 minutes. Get those best bets in right now for State College. From noon Eastern time in Pennsylvania, we go to 4 p.m. Eastern time in the Lone Star State. Austin, Texas is the site for the 5-12 matchup in the college football playoffs opening round. It is number 5 Texas, nearly a 2-touchdown favorite, Lisi guy, against the 12 seed, the Bid Steelers, the ACC champions in Clemson. You see that 13.5-point spread. What is your way of approaching our second of 3 on this CFB Saturday?
From the side perspective, I lean to Texas because of the speed advantage offensively and defensively. They have the better secondary as well, only giving up 143 passing yards to opposing quarterbacks. And I believe I have the better quarterback in Quinn Ewers than Cade Klubnik. I think it's points aplenty, though. This is my favorite bet of the day. I'm going over the 50.5. I think they set the tempo at home. They put the pressure on Clemson's offense to match them score for score. I don't think Clemson could do it. Do like Clemson's team total because I think this game sails through into the 60s, Kev.
I like Clemson catching 7.5. Total-wise, I probably lean the other way, but I'm not on it. I don't feel super strong about it. I just expect more running from Texas. I think it's their best path towards victory here. Keep it slow enough where maybe Clemson 7-10 points in the first half is all they actually need to stay inside it. They were inside this number when they played Georgia, South Carolina, a lot of road games as well within ACC action.
I think they are going to establish that run for the Longhorns, and I think that lead back is the youngster Quintravion Wisner. Not a great game, but still 19 carries against Georgia. In their final 2 regular season games in the SEC, 33 carries, more than 185 yards against A&M in the Lone Star Showdown, and a big day against Kentucky as well. Clemson's rushing defense, as bad as we have seen in the last decade, Quintravion Wisner over 88.5. Let's get you to the nightcap in Columbus. Ohio State in the 8-9 matchup, a 7.5-point favorite against the Volunteers of Tennessee. Kev, in the shoe tonight, what's the best bet?
Jeremiah Smith over 69.5 receiving yards. First 7 games of his career. Yup. Missed it once. 87 and 100. Kid can't be stopped. Last 2 games, 69 total. He steps up in big games. He has all season long. That Vol secondary is vulnerable.
It's good. It's a good look. I'm going the other way, though. I'm going Tennessee with the points, plus 7.5. I think the tempo of Dylan Sampson and the rushing attack, averaging well over 4.5 yards per carry, keeps them in this ball game in the fourth quarter.
Averaging 131 yards is Dylan Sampson against power competition this year, over 92.5 rushing yards. We're still here on Pro Football Today next, but the college football playoff starts right now.
Are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.